Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update, and I'm Ben Quiggle. My normal co-host, Mike, is not here. He, I guess, had a scheduling conflict. I think he's on the beach in Hawaii, probably. That's probably more than likely where he's at. But we'll have to try to do the show without him. I have two guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because, Monika, I'm afraid I'm going to butcher your last name, and I am horrible with last names. So we'll start with Monika and just kind of introduce yourself and what you know, who you represent and what you do, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Monika Geraci. No one pronounces it right ever, so I answer to all sorts of things. But I am the director of PR and communications for the RV Industry Association, and I'm lucky that my title is pretty straightforward. I do the PR and communications for the RV Industry Association.
Yes. And then Lloyd, I guess tell everyone what you do.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Lloyd Lauland. I am the president of RVC Outdoor Destinations. We develop and manage approximately 11 RV resorts, upscale RV resorts around the country, from Yosemite all the way up to Lake Raystown in Pennsylvania and down to Florida. So
yeah, and I remember
nice to be with all of you today.
Yeah, great to have both of you on. I remember Lloyd writing about your RVC Outdoors, and you guys had 10 resorts, and now you guys are growing. You've got Pigeon Forge you just opened, and you've got 2 or 3 under development, right?
Yes, we do. Ben, thank you. It's been an exciting time.
Yeah.
We are completing an expansion right now at our Live Oak Landing Resort, just north of Destin, on the Choctawhatchee Bay.
Yeah.
We're adding 30 sites. Those will be open any day now. Pigeon Forge has been such a great success. We started with 149 sites there. We're adding another 100 sites as we speak. At this time, it appears that by June of this year, we'll be ready for that expansion to be completed. So we're excited about that. It's a beautiful resort right in the center of everything in the Smoky Mountains, and we've got a mile of waterfront on the Little Pigeon River. It's just an amazing place. So
yeah, definitely.
And then we've got Gulf Shores. Will be opening in May of this year. It's been very, very popular. Advanced interest in the resort has been outstanding. And then we're getting ready to break ground in Sandusky, Ohio, just south of Cedar Point. So
yeah, that's in my neck of the woods. I live in Southeast Michigan, so not too far from me. So it'll be neat to be able to go over and check out that resort once it's complete. So
yes, it'll be right across from the Kalahari Resort. So
yeah,
it's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I always liked I like RVC's resorts and the bee cause thing that you did. I know we did a story on the bees. My son and I raise bees, so it's interesting that a campground has beehives in it. So
that's our community service project at all of our resorts, educating everyone from mom and dad to the kids about the importance of bees in our lives.
Yep. So, but I guess I wanted to start. We wanted to talk a little bit about gas prices and inflation, which is something most American consumers have been focused on, I think, the last few weeks. Although the gas prices have kind of stabilized, I guess it probably depends on where you live, but where I live in Southeast Michigan, they've actually kind of went down a little bit. But I guess I just kind of wanted to start a little bit. Maybe Monika, just kind of give us, I think people were a little concerned people might stop like driving their RVs or going camping this summer if it got too high. Doesn't look like we're going to hit the $5 or $6 a gallon average that some of these people were trying to scare us with, though. So
yeah, I mean, gas prices definitely are up, as inflation and prices in general. But what
Yeah.
we've seen, and we've done the research looking at the correlation between gas prices or oil prices and the demand for RVs. And what we know is that while people may not drive as far, that
Mhm.
there's not an oversized impact on the RV industry. We had our economists look at this specifically, and there was actually the correlation from when gas prices were really high in 2003 to 2005.
Yeah.
RV shipments were going up, and then again when there were really sustained high oil prices in 2012 to 2015, again RV shipments went up at the same time. Where RV shipments did go down was during the Great Recession, and I think we all know that there's a lot more that was going into that than just high oil prices. So what you can kind of take away from this is that it's not, you can't just look at oil prices and what is that impact. It's really the entire economy and what that looks like. So inflation is not great, and I don't think it's great for really many industries. So that's probably a bigger concern than just the single pinpoint of oil or gas prices.
Now, Lloyd, I know you sent me some stuff because Woodall's Campground Magazine is putting together a story on campground owners and operators, what it's gonna what they're kind of thinking as far as gas prices and inflation. And I know you responded to that. I guess just kind of give us your viewpoint for how it could impact RVC Outdoors, or what you guys are doing, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We really haven't changed our game plan very much. At RVC, we're very proud. We have always prided ourselves that we offer a tremendous value to our guests at a very reasonable price, and really have developed resorts that have been really customer centric. So that helps us, number one, to attract customers and actually keep customers for a very long period of time. And the research that we've done, Ben, has really told us that depending on where our resort is located, we typically draw most of our guests from a 300-mile radius to our resorts. And what we've seen over time, we don't want to be so overconfident to say that inflated gas prices won't steer some consumer to make a different choice. But we have seen that over time that weather is more of a factor than rising gas prices or fuel prices. It hurts, it hurts everyone when you go to the pump and, you're paying more than you did in previous years. But, I would concur with what Monika has shared that, over time, and we've been operating resorts for almost 15 years now. So we've seen what has happened cyclically and historically over time. And, it just, those trends are very similar to what Monika was saying. We really didn't see a downturn or a lot of cancellations. So we're obviously keeping our eye on it. There are many different factors that are in play now than were in 2008 and really in 2012 to 2015, because we've got an unpredictable situation over in Ukraine. We've got an unpredictable, situation here with the inflation and rising oil prices. But overall, we believe that things are set up very, very well this year for us to have another great year.
Yeah. Monika, I guess, I know at the beginning of the year, we had seen some numbers from RVIA, and it looked like they were kind of bumped down a little bit in the last shipment report. I guess what's kind of the reasoning for that. And I guess, what's the year look like for the RV industry? It still looks, I mean, when I go to Elkhart, all the factories are busy. So
Yeah. So we are still running. So last year, 2021, by far the most RVs ever produced in a single year. It was over 600,000 RVs. And for those who maybe aren't familiar on the exact numbers, the previous high was just over 500,000 back in 2017.
Yeah.
So it was a nearly 20% increase last year over the best year ever. So there were a lot built last year, and our initial forecast was a little bit more, just in the 600s again, and now it's to 591. It's at 591,000 is what the updated forecast. So that's still a very strong year. We have seen a lot of restocking at dealerships, which a lot of consumers should be happy to know that more RVs are headed to dealerships. We do see that consumer demand remaining very high, but there last year was a lot of RVs built, and so it's almost on par with last year, but it is a tick lower.
Yeah, what are some of the are they still facing like supply chain issues, or is it mainly just they're just so busy that they got to catch up from the last 2 years, I guess?
Yeah, so they definitely faced a lot of, I've heard it referred to as whack-a-mole when it came to the supply chain issues. It was, one thing one week, and it would become something completely different the next week, and keeping track of not keeping track of, but addressing all of these different supply chain issues. The RV industry really did an incredible job, manufacturers, suppliers, of addressing those and building that over 600,000 RVs. And right now, the industry is on pace for that 600,000, but we do expect, partly from the inflation and this uncertainty, that it could soften a little bit in the second half of the year. So while right now plants are running, like you said, in Elkhart, at that same 600,000 units for the year, we do expect it to soften just a little bit in the second half of the year.
I'm not a very big numbers guy, but and I don't understand what I'm not an economist, but they just raised the interest rates a little bit. Does that impact like new RV buying or anything?
It's been a gradual impact. So if it's increased a lot higher, there absolutely will be some impact. I also am not an economist, so I do know that all of this goes into that updated forecast that did bring the forecast down just a tick, but all of that does contribute to a little bit more of a conservative forecast for this year.
Yeah, I go to the RV Power Breakfast, and the ones coming up here in May, and they always have an economist, and I'm so thankful that they break it down into dumber language for me so I can understand what they're talking about. So.
That's when you have a really good economist who's so smart and knows all of the things, and then can break it down so that us lay people can understand them and explain them.
Exactly.
Lloyd's a numbers guy, though. At least it seems like you're a numbers guy. I guess what how's the advanced reservations going for your parks this year? And, what are you expecting a better year than last year?
Well, everything, that I look at pretty much on a daily basis, right? Running a company, it's very important. Yes, Ben, I would consider myself a numbers guy because I wake up in the morning looking at numbers, and that's the last thing I do before I go to bed. So advanced reservations for us, same time, if you would, choose, the 22nd of March last year, same time last year, we're up 31% in advanced bookings, which is incredible. And, as I mentioned earlier, we're not seeing any major cancellations like we did with COVID at the beginning of 2020 when COVID outbreak. I was looking at more cancellations numbers, right, than I was advanced booking numbers. But every indication, yes, you get cancellations every day, but we've adjusted, I think everybody in the industry has adjusted to COVID and what that did. And we just know that we're going to be living with it. But, so far and peers and colleagues that I talk to are seeing similar growth, with advanced reservations. I think that we're in a unique situation, that there's shifting demographics within our industry.
Mhm.
And there are more and more people that are using their RV as an affordable housing type situation. They're experiencing the freedom of being able to travel and work remotely because of COVID. I think that that's helped the RV sales over the last several years.
Yeah.
And with all of that freedom and the way that the housing market is going, because we didn't talk about that. I mean, we're seeing, the just huge increases in housing costs right now. So I think we are in a very unique situation that, people will start migrating, I think maybe even more to the affordable housing side of things and seeing their RV as that option,
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a journalist, so I've been told that I'm supposed to be like all doom and gloom, I guess. So, we're all negative all the time. Journalists are negative. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about things that could, like really disrupt the camping this summer. I guess from your viewpoints, like what is something that maybe, in your thoughts could really like, maybe gas prices all of a sudden do shoot up or something. I guess it seems like everything's firing in all cylinders and we don't have to worry about much. I guess what are some things that maybe we would want to keep our eye on, I guess?
Monica, you want me to go or?
You can take this
Sure,
one.
I'll jump in. Ben, I'm looking at weather and I'm looking at possibly another wave of COVID. Those are the two things that are on my radar. And, it's very interesting because, I get an update from the CDC every day and I'm reading what's going on, from Johns Hopkins. And, I mean, on the forefront of what we're looking at right now is we still have a very large portion of our population that are unvaccinated, even though, with the last variant, we had a lot more infections, but less hospitalizations and deaths, thank goodness. But we still have a large portion of our population that has not been vaccinated. And so if another wave does come through, we don't know there's unpredictability with regards to that. So I keep an eye on that and the safety of my staff and making sure that we can operate. And then, of course, I'm keeping an eye on the weather. I mean, we're pretty diversified around the country with regards to our resorts. So I'm not worried about any one particular thing, but it's just people want to camp when it's great weather. And, that's what we live and breathe off of. And I think that there's many in the industry that, like us, that see that weather is more of a factor than anything else. So no hurricanes, no bad things. That's what I pray for.
No more COVID outbreaks. Yeah, no bad weather. No escalation of Cold War II, World War III. We don't want to see anything like that. I do think to go back to what you were talking about a little bit ago, Lloyd, with the impact of COVID on the RV industry, because we all know, I mean, the RV industry was on 40 years of long-term growth. We got a cool chart on our website that shows the 40 plus years of shipments. And absolutely COVID supercharged that. The graph that was already going up. But as we've dug into what exactly was that impact of COVID on people's desire to buy, not just desire, like their actual actions of buying an RV, we found that it's more COVID absolutely had an impact, but it was more in the way that it changed people's attitudes and behaviors than it was a restriction thing. So we actually asked people who bought RVs in 2020 and 2021, why'd you buy an RV? And the top 4 reasons are the same reasons people have always bought RVs. It's wanting to take more road trips. It's wanting to travel in comfort. It's wanting to use an RV as a base camp for outdoor recreation. And it's wanting to explore the great outdoors. And in fact, restrictions on other travel because of COVID was only, I think it was 15%. So it was a very small percentage of people who said, I couldn't do something else, so I bought an RV. And so it's not that restriction, which we're seeing that go away, and hopefully, again, no more COVID outbreaks. There's other travel that's opening up, but that wasn't the driving reason. It's this change in attitudes of, outdoors is the safe place to be. I can't be in my house anymore. And where do I want to be? I want to be outdoors. And people prioritizing that. And that's more of an attitude change that isn't going to go away because COVID's going away. And so that's really good for the industry long term. And I think understanding that, like exactly how COVID impacted the industry and being understanding that it's been this attitude change and not so much the restrictions is really important for people to understand.
Yeah. And we're still a very affordable vacation for families. Absolutely. And that's been our niche in the market. We've been in the affordable family vacation business. And that's why RVC, that's why we build our resorts the way we do, the amenities that we put into our resorts, very family focused from the onset of, that's pretty much our DNA.
Monika, does this impact people's buying habits when it comes to like buying maybe a motorhome versus a travel trailer? Like, if the gas prices are higher, do they stay away from the motorhomes and look at the travel trailers, or do you have an answer for that or not?
I don't have the data to back that up. But again, when it comes to gas prices, people on average use their RVs 20, 22 days a year, and they're not always. It's not always this epic cross-country road trip. Like Lloyd, you said, it's people coming from within 300 miles. And that's what we see. It's, about half of the respondents to how far are you taking your RV is within that 300 or actually under 200 mile range. So gas prices are impacting if you still have to go to an office every day, your daily commute, and that is being impacted way more than your RV trip. So I think it comes down to what people are wanting to use their RV for. Are they wanting to do that cross country trip? Then maybe it's getting a smaller tow vehicle and a smaller towable is just what's going to work for their wallet right now. And then also there's if someone's going to buy a large Class A, their discretionary income is probably larger than other people's, some other people's. And so the gas price isn't as much of an impact on their overall budget as maybe some other people.
We're starting to see more Canadian guests making reservations, and they travel a very long distance, right? So to get down to Florida. So once they're there, they're not using their RV. They're pretty much using it as a base camp. So they have really no operating expenses. They know that it's going to cost them a little bit more maybe this year to get down to Florida. But, along their journey, that path on the way to Florida, we're seeing an uptick in Canadian business this year. That was hugely impacted by COVID and the closing of the border and all of those things. So I'm encouraged by that. I really, didn't expect that to happen. I thought it was going to still, be a little bit down. our international travel, we pretty much have learned to adjust to not having that, especially at our destination resorts in Yosemite, for example, where we had a huge number of international guests that would come every year to do camping. So, I think that as COVID as we learn to live with COVID more and more, and globally things change and international travel comes back, we're going to still be poised for great things to come in the future.
Yeah, that's the amazing part. Like what you said with the international travel is we're having such big years, pretty much with just domestic in even up until like the last year or so, really without the Canadians either. They're starting to trickle back down now. So when the Canadians start coming back in full force, and then once the international, I mean, it's just going to be even harder maybe to get an RV rental or a campsite. They're adding campsites like crazy though, so hopefully
we're trying to do our part by adding as many as we possibly can.
So
we appreciate that. All of these new RVers need a place to go, and we know that right. Looking for those resort type campgrounds is one of the things that people prioritize. So it's love hearing about all of the sites that you're opening up.
Yeah,
it's very exciting for us too.
Monika, you need to open up a campground.
Okay, I'll get right on that.
Okay, right. I guess we can't really talk about gas without EVs. People have been talking about electric vehicles everywhere I go. I've been to conferences this spring, and it's just electric vehicles or plugging in. And even in the RV industry, with the Tampa Super Show, Thor and Airstream, unveiled. Winnebago had some electric vehicles. They all unveiled there, and we're just seeing so much about it. I guess, Lloyd, what's that look like at your parks? I mean, as you kind of look at adapting to maybe seeing more electric vehicles and maybe even some electric RVs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting. I think, it's very aggressive. I think that's the way that everything is going right now in the future. So, we're looking and talking about, from a development standpoint, how do we do things differently? Obviously, all of our pricing typically has electricity built in, and I think as an industry we're going to have to adjust to more and more electric vehicles, including what somebody is either towing or driving, and what that impacts on, from an industry, how that impacts our electricity costs and how we treat that. Because consumption of electricity obviously is going to go higher than what we're normally looking at. So, and do we need more amperage? Do we go from a 30, 50 to 100 amp? What are we going to start building? So yeah, we're talking about that, and I'm doing some research now about electric vehicle charging stations, rapid charging stations. And seeing how we can integrate those into our resorts, and at a reasonable cost, because everybody is, I think, thinking about what that's going to bring to our industry.
And our government affairs team has been working really hard on this issue, the EV issue, for both getting that charging to the public lands, and then also, there's a lot of money for electric vehicle charging infrastructure that was in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed last fall, and so making sure that is going close to our public lands. That also is where a lot of the private campgrounds are at, and how some of that money, I think there's grants and a lot of opportunity for that funding to go, that the private campgrounds as well as the public campgrounds can get in on this electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And our government Affairs team. I've been really impressed with what they're doing to be at the forefront of getting that for our industry.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly the EV thing just like, I mean, you heard about electric vehicles in the past, obviously with Tesla, but like everything else, it just seems COVID like accelerated all of that. And now, you've got so many Teslas being sold. I think they sold like 1 million in California last year, and then Ford and GM and just the
Well,
administration.
and even Rivian, I think,
Yeah.
Rivian was very, very, I mean, I'm keeping an eye on those guys because, they really built the vehicle, their truck anyway, really for the outdoor enthusiast. So, it's exciting to see that you've got these electrical vehicle manufacturers that are doing some very unique things. They're not just going after the luxury market, but they're also catering to our industry, the outdoor industry.
And then Monica, I guess I go around. I talk to a lot of campground owners, and I guess just from the RVIA side, how does RVIA kind of stay in communication with the campground industry and just kind of make I know RVIA helps with a ton of initiatives, and I know you guys do a ton on the government affairs side for campgrounds and the RV industry. So I guess how important is the communication between the two industries just there, I guess.
Yeah, it's critical. So one of the things that if you've heard, particularly at the Power Breakfast last December, Craig Kirby, our CEO and president, one of the things, if you talk to him at all, that comes through is the industry unity. So, RV Industry Association, our membership is the manufacturers and suppliers predominantly, aftermarket as well. But we know that the industry is the best when we're working together. So we work very closely with the RV Dealers Association as well as RVic. And over, I think it's been about a year ago, started this campground task force. So I would say that the campgrounds are actually priority number one right now in this industry unity efforts, and making sure that we are doing all that we can to have more campgrounds, and what is needed on the government affairs front, what is needed in support for research. Next week, we will be releasing this campground study. It's this pretty exhaustive, comprehensive inventory of all of the campgrounds and campsites, and it breaks down private and public and what amenities are at all these sites. Sneak stat, when they compared, and I don't have the data in front of me, when they compared peak demand for campsites compared to what the availability, what the inventory is, it's at 76% currently. And the hospitality, and maybe you know exactly what goes into this, Lloyd, but 80% is considered pretty much like full. If you're at 80% capacity, it's full. And right now, peak season demand compared to campsite inventory is 76%. So we're getting real close to that. And so there is this incredible demand for campgrounds, more campsites. So we're trying to do a lot in this area to provide support and all be working together.
Yeah, which I think is great because, in years past, I don't know if the communication has been there, but it seems like the communication's gotten a lot better between the two industries, and, we support each other. And, the campground industry is extremely tied into the RV industry, and the RV industry obviously wants the campground industry to do well. So it makes sense to have that communication there. So I know the campsites are almost at capacity because I hear all the time from people that they can't find campsites. So, but I think they're available, just maybe not at the popular locations all the time.
It's interesting because in this survey that we asked for people who had bought RVs, were you the ease of booking a campsite? It was pretty high. Like the ease of doing it and finding a campsite was pretty high. What was lower was my ideal campsite, and that's the difference there. And we do know that being able to find that ideal campsite is one of the biggest indicators of whether someone's going to stay in as an RV owner. Is, are they able to do that? If they're able to do that, there's high probability they're going to keep in their RV. If they're struggling there, then there's greater likelihood that they may not continue with being an RV owner. So, I mean, campgrounds are so incredibly critical to the success of the entire industry.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's been it's just been amazing. I'm not a pre-planner, so you know, when I go out and do vacation, like I'll look like, you know, a couple weeks beforehand. So it's definitely hurt me more than people who plan way ahead for vacations. So
And we have both. You know, we have both. I think that part of the reason that we're, you know, having 31% year-over-year growth in our advanced bookings are because people are planning more in advance. But a majority of our business, Ben, is still 15 to 5 days out because everybody's watching the weather.
Yep. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I am with the weather. And then I'm just not a very good pre-planner. So my wife knows that. And it's just the way it is. But it's amazing. Some of these campgrounds are already booking into next year, which is just amazing. And then obviously the RV industry is, some of them have orders out into 2023, I think. And then on the park model side, so I was talking to some of them, they're already out into summer 2023 and looking to 2024, which is just insane. So everybody's busy, so which is good problem. So
yeah.
But I think that's about all the time we had. So thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks Lloyd and Monika for being willing to come on and talk with me. So there's not a lot of people that like to talk.
Thanks for inviting me, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone, and I look forward to being back next week. So bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.